Hello and welcome back to another Gates of Antares painting tutorial. In this video I'll be showing you how you can paint the Isorians in the same style as the Warlord Game Studio. And as always I'll be using the Army Painter's range of paints and brushes to do so. Now as you can see here I've got the Isorian Trooper who I've primed using the Army Painter's leather brown spray primer. This is because most of the armour is a dark brown and this gives us a really good place in which to start off. Now the first layer that we're going to actually be applying to this miniature is a wash of dark toning across the entirety of the armour. Now for this step I'm using my regiment brush, however you could use a large brush if you wanted to. I'm just going to be very liberally applying this across the entirety of the armour, making sure that it gets into all of the recesses like so. Now this will have a dual effect of not only improving the definition of all of the recesses, but also darkening the armour slightly, giving it more of the Warlord Game Studio armour colour. So now that the wash is dry, you can see that it's really darkened the colour of the armour. Now what we want to do is to bring back the lightness along the edges, and for this we'll be highlighting with leather brown. Now for this step I'm going to be using my character brush to pick out the raised sections. I'm going to be going over the leather brown like so. So this will not only improve the definition of the armour by giving us a good contrast between the lighter and the darker areas, it will also help to improve the lightness of the armour as well. Now finally for painting the armour, the next step is to make an extreme highlight on the very top edges, and very thin highlight at that, of monster brown across the armour. Now for this step I'm going to be using my detail brush. I just want to focus on the very upper edges, so for example this section here, just do a very thin line of the monster brown just on the top of the helmet as well here. And this will just enhance the kind of the lighting and shading across the armour. Now the next step in painting the Isorian is to paint the weapon and also a few of the details around the helmet, such as at the side and also these kind of lenses at the top, painting all of these areas with matte black. For this particular step I'm painting with my character brush. This will give me some good control and it will prevent me from overspilling into the areas that I've already painted. And as you can see here I'm just going to go over the entirety of the weapon, just painting it matte black like so. So now that all the black areas have been completed, we can now start with highlighting them, and for this we'll be using a 50-50 mix of uniform grey and matte black. Now for this highlight I'm using my detail brush. I just want to be able to pick out these small details on the edges just like so. So I'm going to be picking out the edges of the weapon and also all around the helmet as well, anywhere that there's black, being very careful not to overspill onto the brown areas. Once the highlights are complete we can now start to work on the faceplate and the helmet, and for this we'll be painting it with ash grey. This time around I'm using my character brush for this section and I've watered the paint down slightly just to allow me to do two coats as opposed to one thick one, and it's going to be really nice and even coverage over the helmet. Once the base layer has been applied to the mask, the next step is to perform a highlight on the top edge of the mask, and for this we'll be using a 50-50 mix of matte white and ash grey. Now for this step I'm using my character brush. I'm just going to be using this to drag a very fine edge across the top edge of the mask like so. Just being very careful not to overspill onto the brown areas or the black lenses on the face. Now the final step for painting the mask is to apply a very watered down wash of soft toning. Now the aim of this wash is to give the mask a slight bone colour but without obscuring the colour too much. I'm just going to be using this very watered down wash on the mask area that you can see here. I've mixed in roughly about 70% water to 30% ink here. Now the next step is to paint all of the orange areas on the miniature. Now this includes the parts of the weapon and also these ridge sections inside the arm. There's quite a lot of them dotted about, so I would recommend taking a look at some of the studio photography to find exactly which areas need to be painted. We're painting all of these areas with lava orange. As we want to avoid overspilling onto the armour that we've already painted, we want to use a smaller brush such as the character brush that I'm using here to paint these inner sections, and be very careful not to overspill. Just being very careful to pick these areas out like so. With the base layer completed, the next step is to apply another layer with a 50-50 lava orange and demonic yellow. For this step I'm once again using my character brush. I'm just going to be focusing on the inside of these vents here, just leaving the darker orange visible in the recesses. As you can just about see I'm doing here. We're doing a similar thing along the weapon as well, painting the edges and just leaving the dark orange visible in the recesses. Now the next step in painting the orange areas is to highlight them with demonic yellow. This time around I'm using my detail brush. I just want to be able to pick out the detail a little bit more easily, so I'm just going to be running this brush along the very edges of these orange sections on the weapon and just repeating this across the entirety of the miniature. Now the final step in painting this Isorian is to wash over all of the orange areas with red tone ink. For this step I'm using my character brush. I'm just going to be applying the wash into these recesses here. Now this will have a double effect of not only providing some extra shading in the recesses, but also help to blend in the several layers that we've been painting in the previous steps. So here we have the completed miniature, and as you can see I've painted the base on this particular miniature as well. Now whilst I've just used a normal Isorian trooper for this painting tutorial, you could actually apply this technique to any of the Isorian troops. Now if you enjoyed this tutorial, do check out my previous Gates of Antares videos, and also subscribe to be kept up to date with all of my latest content. Additionally, if you want to support me in making more tutorials, you can do so by heading over to my Patreon page where you can pledge from $1 a month. And until next time, thanks for watching and goodbye.